Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SYA Italy live stream. I have probably talked to or met a lot of you, but if I haven't, my name's Ann Kettler, and I'm an alumna of SYA Italy from the class of 2012, and I'm also the Italy country manager here at SYA and an assistant director of admissions. I'm here with my lovely colleague, Shauna, who can introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Shauna Campbell and I'm the admissions marketing manager here at SYA. So before we get started, I just want to point out the chat box, which you can find on the right-hand side of your screen during this broadcast. Please feel free to introduce yourself so we know who's watching. And then on the later half of our program, we're going to open it up to you guys to ask our alumni any questions that you have about SYA Italy. So feel free to start typing in those questions now and we'll get to them later.
Speaking of alumni, I'd like to introduce you all to two very special guests who are more recent SYA Italy alums. So take it away, Jerome.
Hi, my name is Jerome Venisi. I'm a freshman at GWU down in DC, and I graduated from SYA Italy last year. I had a really amazing time. It was incredible, and I'm happy to be here talking to you.
And I'm Angelina Palizzi. I go to University Liggett School in Michigan, and I also graduated from SYA Italy last year, and it was amazing. The best decision I've ever made.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. So how did you both decide you wanted to study abroad in Italy while you were in high school?
So, I ran into the program kind of accidentally. I went to the wrong assembly while I was at my school, and my school has a relationship with SYA, with the program. A lot of kids from my school go every year. And after I sat through the assembly, I was enamored with the idea of going to Italy and studying for a year. And that's kind of how I decided. It was an easy decision for me.
It was also an easy decision for me, but I have always wanted to study abroad, especially in Italy, and I thought that I would do it in college until my friend Ellis, who goes to boarding school, he sent me the information about SYA and said that I should check it out. So I did some research, and then I decided that I really wanted to do it, and then I did.
Well, thanks. After you decided to apply and decided to enroll in Italy, and then once you arrived in Rome and then Viterbo, what were your first couple of days like?
The first couple of days were a lot of fun. My host brother was my age when I got there. He was 18 like I was, and I actually arrived the night before my 18th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And, so it was a fantastic first couple of days. He showed me around the city. We met his friends. It was kind of our first taste of Italian culture while we were there, and it was really a lot of fun. The jet lag was tough. I almost fell asleep in class a few times, but that stops after the first week. Other than that, it was really fantastic.
Yeah, the first couple of days were awesome. I was getting settled in with my host family, and I had an initial thought like, oh my God, what did I do? Now I'm here, I can't go back. But so the first couple of days when we were there, they had La Macchina di Santa Rosa, which is a big festival in Viterbo, and everyone comes and sees 100 men carry this big statue, which is awesome. So that was kind of our first introduction to what Italy was like in the city and who was there. So we got to meet a bunch of people and meet our peers in SYA before school started.
So was it hard for you guys to make friends? Maybe talk a little bit about that process, since you guys are all new and you're all coming together in Viterbo. Yeah, tell us about making friends.
Well, making friends within the program, everybody who we met, I mean, we all met each other pretty quickly. None of us really knew each other coming into the program. So no, I don't think it was really tough to make friends. I think everybody was pretty open-minded, willing to meet each other. And Italians, they love Americans. They're fascinated by Americans. I mean, everybody we met wanted to talk to us. Everybody we met wanted to talk to us in the street when they heard us speaking English. I thought it was easy to meet people, and it was a lot of fun meeting people all over the place.
Yeah, I don't think it was hard to make friends either, because we were all in the same boat. And we all didn't know anyone. We all wanted to make friends, and we all had something in common, and we all had Italy in common, and that we were there for a whole year together. So it was easy.
Do you guys remember when you first met your host families and what that was like?
Yeah, it's I don't want to spoil the ceremony that they do, but it's funny. It's funny to meet your host family and to meet the people that you're going to be living with for a year for the first time. They're all very nice people, all of the host families. I know that that's a big concern going into the program, is that the host families, there might be problems with the host families. They're all very, very kind people, and they're all very welcoming. And it was really a blast to, even from the first day we met them, it was a blast.
Yeah, it was kind of nerve-wracking to meet them because we had emailed a couple times over the summer, and then to meet them in person was awesome. And then to go home with them, and they made me dinner the first night, and we just talked and talked and talked, and we stayed close for the rest of the year. So.
Hey, Jerome, you mentioned that you had a host brother, but can both of you kind of go into detail who was in your host family?
So for me, it was my host brother, Ricardo, who was 18. He was my age. My host mother, Barbara, and then my host dog, Willie.
Important member of the family.
Very important.
For me, I had my host dad, Mauro, and my host mom, Sylvia, and my host sister, Ludovica, who's 15, and my host brother, Jacopo, who's 10.
Awesome.
And what was it like for you having a host family?
Having a host family, it was really incredible. I mean, learning to live with different people from different cultures, I think opens your mind in ways that you really only understand after the fact. It's a really amazing experience to get to know people on the level that you get to know your own family over the course of a year. It's an incredible, life-changing experience, and it's an integral part of living abroad, I think. It's an integral part of getting to know the culture.
Yeah, and my host family, they treated me like I was their own daughter. My host siblings treated me like I was their sister. And you just get so used to living with these people, and it's like your family. They're my second family now.
And in terms of classes, did you guys have any classes that you particularly enjoyed while you were in Italy?
I took agroecology with Mr. and Mrs. Scanlon. And that was, to boil it down simply, it was the class of food science. So we made wine, cheese, we processed meats. We basically learned about all the different artisanal ways of making food that they practice in Italy. It was a fantastic class, and it provided fantastic results. I mean, we got to eat all of our work. Definitely the most rewarding class I'd ever taken up until that point.
And I loved global citizenship with Mr. Gatti. So in that class, we got to learn about current events that are going on in the world. And we also got to interact with locals, because when we were there was an election going on. So we got to talk to a bunch of people about that, students at the high schools, locals at the cafes. So I loved that class.
Yeah, I know those are two great classes that so many alums really love. And something that's special about both those classes in particular is the experiential education and fieldwork components. Do you guys mind talking a little bit about what that was like for you?
So in terms of agroecology, we went to visit a lot of different farms and a lot of different factories and workshops where people were practicing the arts of making cheese, wine, processing meat, the way that they've been practicing them and improving those traditions for thousands of years. So that was a really, really cool experience. For example, we went to harvest olives and then watched the processes they were made into olive oil. We went to a cheese farm and were walked through the process of making different kinds of cheese. We made our own wine. It was a really incredible way to learn the different processes and learn about the culture. And I mean, how many classes do you take where you get to eat the results of your work? And not that many, right?
In global citizenship, a lot of our field work was in Viterbo. So we got to go around and talk to locals, which was very fun, and interview locals and bond with each other. So that was really fun. And then at the end, we painted all together these murals that you could choose what you wanted to paint. I did mine on saving the bees. So I painted a bee, and that was really fun. And we did that in the city in a piazza. So it was really fun.
I know that outside of traveling and outside of classes and host families, travel can be a really important and exciting part of the SYA experience, both independently and educational class trips. Do you guys mind sharing some of your favorite travel memories, both with the SYA group and independently?
Oh man, we traveled a lot. We took 2 big trips with the school in particular, and my favorite of those trips was the trip we took to Rome around Thanksgiving. We had a really fantastic time exploring Rome. We spent a week there in a hotel right in the center of the city, within viewing distance of the Colosseum. And we were able to explore the city and get to know the city of Rome in a way that you really don't if you just go there to do touristy things. And that was probably my favorite trip that we took at SYA. I really had an amazing time and learned a lot about Rome.
And my favorite school trip was the trip that we took in March to Verona. So we went to Verona and we spent a week there, and we had these things called Jolly Days. So you would choose an activity or an assignment for 2 classes, and then for 2 of the days out of the week that we were in Verona, you would go to a different city and do the assignment. So I went to Bologna one day to make cheese and learn how to make cheese and write something for agroecology at Italy. And then we went to Venice, and we did assignments there for Italian language and culture, which is another class. And it was a really fun experience. And then I thought Verona was one of the most beautiful cities I'd ever seen.
So changing topics slightly away from classes, what did you guys do outside of school for co-curricular activities?
I took the cooking classes both semesters. So I took cooking classes that were led by women who were host mothers in Viterbo. And they taught us both traditional dishes of Viterbo and traditional Italian dishes like spaghetti alla carbonara and the kind of stuff that you would get at an Italian restaurant in the States. And that was honestly unbelievable. I could not cook before going to Italy. And now it's one of my favorite pastimes. It was, what I got out of those classes it's impossible to even describe. It was really, really an amazing class. It was a lot of fun. We learned to cook great stuff and we ate great food. And we made friendships and talked with the host moms who were leading the classes. And it was just it was a lot of fun.
And the entire year, I taught English at one of the Italian schools in Viterbo. So in the beginning of the year, I taught little kids that were, I think, from ages 4 to 7. So I taught them colors and animals. And then at the high school, I went for 2 hours every Saturday morning. And we did more grammar and reading and just more conversational-based learning. And that was really fun for me because I got to make friends at the high school that I hung out with outside of school, and I still talk to some of them now.
Yeah, I think that activities, whether it's cooking or teaching English or sports, can be a really great way to make friends. I remember when I was abroad with SYA, I took a stone carving class, and it was taught by some really old Italian stone carvers. And it was such a cool way to make friends. And I made really interesting stone pieces for my host family. And I think that whether it's art, sport, music, cooking, volunteering, that the activities can be a great way to connect with people in Viterbo and really integrate into the community. Do you know of any of your friends and your peers from your time at SYA did other activities that sounded interesting or particularly Italian to you?
I know there was one student our year who went to an Italian shoemaker to learn how to make shoes. And And there were a handful of cases like that, people who sought out their own interests there and were able to fulfill them in a bunch of interesting ways. I can't think of too many examples off the top of my head.
I know a lot of people enjoyed playing soccer. So there was a soccer team, an SYA soccer team, and we all had jerseys. And we got to play against we played against like 14-year-old Italian boys, and they crushed us, but
So speaking of Italian, did you guys speak any Italian before you went to SYA Italy? And what was your language background before attending SYA?
Zero. I'd really not studied a single word of Italian before I arrived in Italy. And I had studied Latin in high school, not extraordinarily diligently, but I had studied Latin in high school. The language process is difficult, but it comes. I think that was one of my biggest concerns coming into the program, was that I would leave it without having learned the language. And having finished the program and having come out of it, I could not be happier with where my language skills are at. So that again is a huge rewarding part of it, is learning the language. And even if you come in with zero knowledge of the language and zero background in having learned any kind of Romance language, it's still possible.
For me, my family and I used to go to Sicily all the time. And so my family spoke the Sicilian dialect, but I had never really learned any of it. I couldn't even understand any of it by the time I went to SYA. And I had studied Italian a little bit on my own, but not well enough to speak anything. I knew like, good morning, good afternoon, how are you? The basic stuff. And then when I got there, I realized I could understand better than I thought. And I had taken Latin and Spanish in freshman and sophomore year. So I kind of had a Romance language background, and languages had always come pretty easy to me. And I think by the third month, I could express myself, and people didn't even know that I was American when I went out and I would speak to people. They would ask me, and I'd be with a bunch of Americans. They'd be like, but you're Italian, right? You're not American. I'd be like, no.
Yeah, that's funny. I had no Italian language background before going to SYA. I had studied Spanish for many years, but was never a strong Spanish speaker and never even considered myself to be a language person until SYA. And then by the time I left, Italians would also think I was Italian. And those moments of feeling conversant or fluent, or it finally clicking, especially in the fall, is just so rewarding, I think.
So we actually have a question from a parent, since this kind of is related. Since you guys didn't know Italian when you first arrived, how did you communicate with your host family?
So I bought like one of these foldable language things. It was like, I bought it in the airport. You can buy them, I think, basically everywhere. And you open it and it's like, it's how to say like, I want to use a bathroom, and I want to get some water. I want to get some food. I'm hungry. I'm tired, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that thing was like my Bible for the first couple of weeks. You'd be surprised how fast the language comes. You'd be surprised how fast you begin to speak, how fast you begin to learn, how easy communication becomes. And I mean, how nuanced communication is when there's not necessarily a shared language. Like that's a whole aspect of communication that I'd never even thought about. And it was pretty interesting, how you communicate with somebody that you can't communicate with verbally. Obviously, that problem fixes itself pretty quickly, but it's definitely an interesting part of the learning process. Buy one of those foldable books. It will help. It helped me.
So when I first got there, my host mom and my host sister spoke a little bit of English, not too much, but they were able to help me get around, and they helped me with my Italian a bunch, and they taught me expressions. And also in class, when we first got there, they told us common things that people say or what people mean. And we had really intensive Italian classes for the first few weeks. just to get us on our feet and learning and listening and really immersing yourself in the culture really helps. So listening to my host family speak to each other at dinner, or watching movies in Italian with subtitles in Italian, or just even going out to the cafe and ordering in Italian, and then they're asking you questions and you kind of have to, I don't know, but it does come very quickly and it comes very easily, and it is surprising, like Jerome said.
I think we're getting some more questions from parents and or interested students. One student has asked if you could talk about the experience of being a tourist as opposed to being a tourist in Italy as someone might typically be, as opposed to being there and integrating into the community and someone who is actually living there.
Yeah, so I guess talk about the transition, like when you started feeling like a local, like when did that start happening?
That's a great question. I would say it started happening like 2 to 3 months into the program, pretty much in linear correlation with our knowledge of Italian. As the fluency started to come, as the proficiency started to come in the language, you definitely feel like you're a lot more at home. And the people around you start to treat you like more like friends and more like individuals as opposed to tourists, which is a pretty interesting part. You earn their respect, I think, because that they're used to people that are coming to their town and not bothering to learn Italian and not bothering to respect the customs. You earn their respect when you speak their language and when you know what's going on in their town and when you come to the different cafes. And that's a pretty cool sensation. You know, I would say 1 to 2 months into the program, 3 months maybe, is when you start to feel like a local and when you start to feel like you've earned your place there.
Yeah, so I would agree with Jerome. I think 1 to 2 or 3 months in, I started to know my way around the city. I already had the places and the cafes that I would go to every day. So those people started recognizing me. There was a pizzeria in town called Ghost Chili. Go there when you go to SYA. And so I would go there for lunch all the time, and I made friends with the people that worked there. And then when they closed, they would let us stay with them. And they would shut the door, and some friends and I would stay in and eat pizza, and they'd give us all of the extra pizza that no one ate for free. And then you just start making local friends, and people recognize you, and they know who you are, and they know that you're there for a while. And then you speak Italian, and they really appreciate people that speak the language and know the culture and immerse themselves into it.
Can you guys talk a little bit about Viterbo and what it's like to live there?
Viterbo is cool. Viterbo is really interesting because it is ancient. It is beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful things to see, and the towns around it are beautiful. But it is small, and it's still very Italian. There's not a lot of urbanization that you would see kind of around Rome. It's not like there's McDonald's everywhere, fast food. It still feels like you're in Italy, and it's a completely immersive experience. And there's a lot of like beauty in the town. There's a lot of ancient ruins around it. There's a lot of cool things to see, especially if you're interested in history or art. There's a lot of things to see in Viterbo and around Viterbo in those subjects.
Yeah, Viterbo was really beautiful. Sometimes when you're walking, it doesn't even look real. It looks like a fairy tale. And there are fountains everywhere. There are a bunch of different cafes that Jerome and I would sit at every day for hours until we had to go home.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And yeah, it is small, but it's not terribly small. There are things happening all the time, pretty much.
And moving away from Viterbo, do you guys mind talking a little bit about what other places in Italy you visited while you were abroad with SYA?
So I visited Bologna, Padova. We went to Rome many times. Milan, Torino, a handful of other places. Those were the four that I went to on weekend trips. Out of all of them, I think my favorite was Bologna. Bologna is a really, really cool city. It's definitely worth going to while you guys are there. It's 100% worth making the trip to. It's beautiful. The food is fantastic. The food's fantastic everywhere, but the food in Bologna is fantastic. Mi raccomando, I recommend it. I recommend it strongly.
Yeah, we traveled all over. So we went to Rome more times than I can count. I went to Arezzo, Milan, Bologna, Padua, Venice, Verona, like I said, a bunch of small towns around Viterbo because there are so many and they're all so pretty. Naples, Pompeii, Sicily. Some people went to Sicily. There are just endless possibilities of places that you can go because the train is right in the center of Viterbo. You can just hop on a train and go to any town.
And I don't know if you guys already addressed this, but talk a little bit about Fieldwork Wednesdays.
Yeah, Fieldwork Wednesdays. So that a lot of the time we ended up in Rome for Fieldwork Wednesdays. And generally that was when we were given an assignment and we were given an assignment and then independently we would go in a group, but without teacher supervision to complete the assignment. So sometimes that would entail going to Rome, taking the train to Rome, coming back, doing the activity in Rome, et cetera, all by ourselves. We would go and get lunch with our group. They were always a lot of fun and they were always pretty cool activities, interesting ways to get to know the culture.
Yeah, so for example, one of my favorite Wednesday activities was when we watched the movie Life is Beautiful in school, and they sent us to the town that it was filmed in called Arezzo, which is near Florence. So we all hopped on a train and went there, and our assignment was to reenact a scene from the movie and film it and memorize the script, and then we would send it to our Italian teacher, and that was our assignment. So I chose a scene from the movie where someone throws a key from a window, and we actually went into a store, which was right by the house that the key was thrown from, and we got the actual key that was used from the movie and used it in the video that we made.
I had never heard that story before, and that is so cool to me because that is to this day my favorite movie. So I'm so excited that you guys did that. Anybody should watch that movie.
Yeah.
It's so good.
We actually had a couple campus reporters who are in Italy now who wrote a blog about watching that movie and going to that town and how much it impacted them. So for all you watching out there, definitely check out our school news page and read those blogs.
It looks like we got another question from a student who is curious as to how you maintained your friendships and relationships with people back in the United States while you were in Italy.
It was hard. It was hard. You make the decision to go abroad, you're going to be gone for a long time. And that's definitely something to consider, but you can make it work. It's never been easier than it is right now. FaceTime, texting, Snapchat, whatever. Like it's easy to do. It's easy to make it work, but it is definitely something to consider. You're away for a long time, which is awesome, but it is hard. But look, it's possible to make it work for sure. I mean, I was able to keep in touch with my friends pretty much no problem. The time difference was not a giant barrier. You can FaceTime on the weekends and stuff like that.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of harder because I was always so busy doing stuff in Viterbo, and I had a bunch of friends. We had a big group of friends, Jerome and I, and we were always doing stuff. But it is possible to keep in touch with your friends as much as you want. But it's also important to be where you are, and not focus too much on staying in contact with your friends at home. And I was lucky because a lot of my friendships that I didn't really keep in touch with, when I came back, it was like I never left.
So we have another question. Did you meet local teens in Italy, or how did you meet them?
So we spent 2 different weeks in Italian schools. where we all went in groups of 2, and we were in an Italian class and went to class every day with groups of Italian students. And that was one really great way to meet Italian teens. Another way for me that I met a lot of the people I still keep in touch with today was through my host brother, Ricardo. He and I would go out together, and I met all his friends. And I mean, they're my friends now too. Some of them I'm still very, very close to and talk to very frequently. Italians, they're very, very friendly. They want to meet Americans, and they want to be friends with you, and they want to talk to you. And like, you know, if you make the effort to connect with people, they will reciprocate it. It's a pretty easy thing to do.
Yeah, so in Italian school, Jerome's for the school that Jerome went to, I think he was in groups of 2, but I was in the scientific school and I was by myself. So I kind of had to be more outgoing than I usually am because I'm pretty shy, and I made friends with a bunch of people in my class, and we would go out to lunch after school was over during that week, and we'd go out to dinner sometimes. And then another way was through my host sister. She was a little bit younger than me, so I didn't really hang out with her friends that much, but when I was with her, we would hang out with them. And then Jerome's host brother had a bunch of friends, and I was also friends with Jerome's host brother, and he was kind of like a part of our little group. And so he would bring his friends, and we'd all hang out in a big group of Americans and Italians, and it was fun. So that was another way through my American friends I would meet other Italians.
So now that you've been back in the US for 10 months, close coming up on a year, how has SYA Italy impacted you?
Where to start? I don't even know. Like, I mean, I cannot even think of where to begin. Number one, I mean, I have a brother and another mom who live in Italy. You know, forget host brother, forget host mom. That's my brother. You know, like I have family in another country, and that's a pretty incredible thing. I mean, that's definitely the biggest tangible effect. Another huge thing is coming home and being able to speak Italian. Being able to finally speak to my grandparents in Italian was a pretty incredible thing. You know, like my mom was like crying when she was seeing me talk to my grandparents in Italian finally. But I mean, I don't even know where to start. There were so many amazing things that I took away from SYA. You know, we still miss it every day.
Yeah, for me, it really changed how I act socially. Before SYA, I was super shy, was not outgoing at all, did not want to talk to anyone, had like 1 or 2 close friends and then some acquaintances, but not really. And then when I got to Viterbo and I met all the kids in SYA, I learned how to make friends and how to build friendships and how to maintain relationships. And now coming back, I have so much more to talk about, so many more things to say, new expressions that my friends at SYA said, different sense of humor in a way. Because SYA kids, we had our own little sense of humor as a group. So I took that from it. I mean, my family, I talk to them so much. The language is another thing. Sometimes I think in Italian and I miss it.
Did you guys write about SYA for your college application, or do you think it helped distinguish you during the college application process?
Absolutely. I think so, for sure. Anecdotally, I've heard that colleges love SYA. I have heard that colleges across the board love to see SYA on people's transcripts. I think for sure it distinguished me, if only by virtue of the fact that it gave me a different set of skills. It gave me a different view of the world from which I was able to project myself to the colleges that I applied to. And for that alone, I would say it made me a more attractive candidate.
Yeah.
Or at least it made me think I differentiated myself.
100%. I wrote about SYA and I applied to colleges after SYA was already done. So I had the whole year of experience to write about. And I just chose one certain thing. I wrote about finding my voice through English teaching in Italy. So, and I think it definitely made me stand out. I think based on where I got accepted, I think that, and the scholarships I got for different things, I think it definitely made me stand out.
Great.
Well, is there anything else that you guys would like to add about your experience with the interested students and their parents?
Maybe give them one piece of advice.
My biggest piece of advice. So when I was deciding to go, you know, I went when I was a senior in high school. So I was deciding to miss my last year of high school. You know, the last year that I would be spending with the people that I had known for my entire life. And what one of my friends said to me was, he said that when I asked him, I thought, you know, what do you think? Should I go or should I stay? And he said, I think that there's a way for you to stay here and regret staying. But there is no way that you go to Italy and regret going. There is no scenario in which you all will look back on your year. If you decide to stay, there is no way, excuse me, if you decide to go, there's no way you will look back on your year and regret having decided to go. That the same is not true of staying at home. And that's, I think, something to think about when you're making that decision.
So my biggest piece of advice is, if you do decide to go, is to really be where you are and soak it all in, because the year will go by in the blink of an eye. And it is insane how quickly it went, and that I'm already back. I feel like I should be there right now. I feel like I was there yesterday when I think of all my memories. And sometimes in the beginning of the year, I thought, oh, I have so much time, I can do this later. But I didn't spend a lot of time in the beginning really soaking it all in and being in Viterbo or being in Rome or being in wherever city I was. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
Great. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
If we didn't get to your question, Anne will be responding to your question on a one-on-one basis. So look out for that. And again, guys, that was awesome. It was a pleasure having you both. Thank you so much for joining us. And ciao.
Yeah, ciao ragazzi.
Arrivederci, ciao.
Wow.